It is still April as I am filming this video, and it is finally starting to become spring weather. And as with spring, nicer days are ahead. And I have this beautiful pond here that I absolutely love, but I have one problem, and that is that I do not have anywhere to sit. There's no bench, there's nowhere to sit. And today we are going to fix that. So in this Woodstory, I'm going to show you how you can build an inexpensive bench. I'm talking less than 50 bucks. And the best part is that you can make it in just a few hours. So go grab your tools and let's start this Woodstory. Just like I do with most of my projects, I love to draw them up in Fusion 360 to get a good idea about what the project is going to look like. And this is the design as it looks right now. And it's a fairly straightforward design. And that's the whole point of this project. I wanted it to be a bench that you can literally make in just a few hours. But the best part is that the cost is also extremely low. Now, I went out and I got pressure treated wood. So this is a little bit more expensive than just buying pine, but it will last a long time. And because it's going to be outside, I did want to add that little bit of extra protection. So once this project is done, you will be able to make it for less than 50 Canadian dollars. And if you're in the US, I think that's like $32 plus minus the conversion rate right now. So that is a bargain. Now, that said, there is one aspect that will make this project stand out that you may or may not be able to do depending on your tool set. And that is that I plan to add my last name to the top of the bench as part of the finishing techniques. And if you have that ability, then do it. This might be the reason that someone chooses you for buying this bench over someone else. And if you don't have that as an option, well, then you can always buy some router templates and do that by hand instead. And if you're wondering if we have router templates with letters, then of course, just go check out my website. They've just been added and I hope that you will enjoy them. Before you start building your bench, in order to save on materials, make sure that you double check that cut list because I have optimized it so that you have to make very specific cuts in order to save on boards. So the first cut that I'm going to be making is the 32-inch cut, which is going to be the back panel for this bench. So I'm going to do that one first because if for whatever reason I mess up, then I might be able to salvage another board. But of course, I won't mess up. Why would I do that? That's a silly thing to say. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to start chopping up and I'm going to pick some nice pieces because I see this one has a little bit of a crack right here. So I don't want to use that. And I also don't want to use that. I want to use some that look really nice and strong with lots of structural integrity, so to speak. Because if we end up having to use stuff like this, then I will need to put a bow in. So that could be fun too. So we shall see. The 32-inch pieces are going to be used for the back of the bench. And once I've cut these, I'll be left with 2 additional pieces measuring just a bit longer than 5 feet. Now these are going to be used for the top back of the bench. This is the part that I will later use my CNC to cut my last name into. And if you don't know this already, my last name is Standish, which is why my channel is called Standish Woodstory, because it's my last name and it's stories about all the wooden projects that I make. Hence, Woodstory. Yeah, get it? But it's also your Woodstory, which means you can grab the digital plans and build this project yourself, and you have my full permission to sell the finished project. In fact, I encourage it. And please, feel free to share your finished work with me because I love to highlight and reshare your work both over on Instagram and on my Patreon page. So what are you waiting for? Let's start your Woodstory. I jointed the 2 oversized 5-foot backboards, but you can also just cut them on a table saw. This is just to get a nice straight edge for the glue up. And I'm only connecting them because I plan to engrave them later. So if you are not engraving them, you can skip this glue up step and just leave them as 2 separate pieces for now. So we have the 2 boards. These are the sides that are going to have the back attached to them when we are done, and they're going to go all the way down to the ground. And these ones are measuring 32 inches long. Now, we need to make some angles, which essentially are a 15-degree angle here and a very small 15-degree angle down here. But we want to make sure that we're doing it at the right points. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to determine what's going to be my top and what's going to be my bottom, and I actually want to have that be my top and this be my bottom right here. And then once you've determined that, you're going to just take your measuring tape and you're going to mark 15 inches down. And I'm just making that in Sharpie just so that it's a little easier to see in the camera, but I would just recommend doing that with a pencil mark. And then same thing up here, I'm going to measure 1 inch out and I'm going to make a mark right here. And this one is going to be right towards the top. 1 inch. And it is important that this one, that you can see this coming all the way out as well. Okay, like that. So now I have a one that's 15 inches from the top and 1 inch out. Now, one thing to note is that this piece right now, as it arrived, is too wide. I actually only need it to be 4.75. So on this line that I just made, I'm going to make another mark, 4.75, right here. And that's over here because all of this is technically going to be cut away. And then you're going to need some sort of a straight edge. It doesn't matter what it is. I just have a piece of rigid, hard cardboard. And I'm going to go up to my top edge right here and to the mark that I made down here. Make sure that it's perfect. And then I am going to mark that all the way down. Great. Okay. Sorry, my Sharpie didn't quite mark right there. But as you can see, this right here is what we're going to be cutting away. And let me grab my pencil this time. So all of this is going to be cut away. And you can do that on a table saw if you have a jig that will allow you to do the angles. You can do it on a bandsaw. You can use it with a jigsaw, whatever you prefer. Now, when you get to the bottom part here, you can do another measurement down. So again, 4.75. 4.75 right here. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to once again use my straight edge right here, my very fancy piece of cardboard straight edge. And I am going to draw a line down. And this is just my own helper line because this is all the stuff that we're going to be taking away. All of this is going to go bye-bye. Okay, so that's going to go away in addition to this. The last thing we have to do is we have to make an opposite cut that's going to go this way in. And that angle, we also have to make a mark for just to make it easier. So this time I'm going to make a mark and it's going to be at 4.25. Okay, so 4 1/4 here. Try my best to get it as far down as possible. Right here, 4.25. Okay, and then we're going to measure 2 inches up. 2 inches up right here. But I need that on the other side. It's always a little tricky with the measuring tape. Right here. So from this mark to this mark, we are going to take it away. Right here. I'm going to mark that with my Sharpie. Okay, so this is going to be the angle that we're going to cut away. So it's just going to be a little piece right there. Okay, so it turns out I did have a slight mistake here. Something wasn't making sense. I had to go back and check it. And that's because I made my mark all the way over here. But I, of course, should have made it on the line because we're going to be cutting all of this away. So actually what I need to do is I need to make the 2-inch mark right here. And this, remember, this is 4.75 and this is 4.25, and those are the two lines that are going to be connected with each other. So it's going to look like this. There we go. Perfect. So this is all going to be cut away. There we go. And it's just going to go slightly in. But this is going to be our helping point later on because later we need to connect the boards. So once we've cut this away, it's going to tell us exactly where that board is going to sit. It's going to make it a lot easier for alignment. And it's just going to be a little design feature when done. So now let's get to the cutting part. If you don't have a bandsaw, you could also use a table saw with a jig such as this one shown here. I recently got this kit from Microjig that allows you to build your own. And I have to say I really like it because it's great for cutting those funky angles that you need to be 100% accurate. Check it out. I'll leave the link below if you're interested. The next step is cutting a couple of these boards here into the middle pieces that we need. And in order to optimize the cuts, do refer back to the cut list again, because from some boards you need to cut a 15-inch piece and a 17-inch piece, and from other ones you just cut a 15 and a 15. But regardless, you want to make sure that you leave 5 feet afterwards because we will need the longer portion of these boards. And the problem that I'm running into right now is that some of my boards are okay, but I have other ones that have big cracks through it. So I'm trying to figure out if it makes more sense that I'm using the ones with the crack for the legs, or if it makes more sense to use them for the bench top afterwards. And I think what I've determined is I'm going to use my nicest woods for the bottom part, which will be hidden. However, if I end up in a situation where I don't have enough wood because I need those long 5 feet pieces at the end, then I'm going to get creative and I'm going to add some bow ties to these in order to pull them back together and utilize them. Or if it gets really bad, then I'm going to shorten my bench. It's supposed to be a 5-foot bench, but because it is flexible, I can make it 4 feet if I really have to. So wanted to point that out in case you have the same issue and if you're wondering if it's worth going back to the lumber store or not. Let's get to work. Let's cut the 15-inch pieces, the 17-inch pieces, but remember to leave those long 5-foot pieces for later. So we have our pieces now cut, the middle pieces. We ended up with 2 of the 17-inch pieces and 4 of the 15-inch pieces, and that is, of course, 1 per set. And we already did the back piece. And as you remember from before, we cut this nice and straight so that it's going to be easier to connect to the other ones. But that means we also have to do that on these new pieces. So on the 17-inch piece, we only need to do it on the one side. We can leave this nice and rounded. But on the inside pieces, we do need to do it on both sides so that we can connect them really well together. So the goal here is to get it uniform, of course. And right now we're at like 21.5 inches, and I want to end up closer to 19 inches. Now, as long as it's the same on both sides, it's not that big of a deal if you're a little bit on and off, but just make sure you take off the same on both sides to keep it completely uniform. I would probably like to keep them the same size. So this is 4.75. So my goal is to get each one of these down to 4.75. And that's just going to look really nice when you see it all together, because even though it will be one big uniform piece, you know, it's still kind of nice to have some consistency. So I'm going to cut these over on the table saw. So let's get to it. So now that the pieces are nicely cut so that they can align nicely with each other, there's only one more step to do before we start the glue up. And that is to mirror the angle that we did on this side. And that will, again, allow us just to line it up really nicely so that you know exactly where this board is supposed to go. So we're going to take this and we're going to just use this as a template right here. So I'm just going to line this up all the way to the bottom here. Perfect. And then trace it. And now I'm just going to cut this off, and I have my nice little template. Do that on the other side too. And remember, this is the 17-inch board. So just make sure you're using the right board and that you put it in the right direction when you're doing this. Because you might have a nice side and a not so nice side that you want to utilize. And again, cut it on the bandsaw, table saw, up to you. I'm going to start gluing up the 2 different sides. If you don't want to wait for glue to set, you have a few other alternatives for putting these together. You could use correct screws, and you could pick a side that's going to be the inside side so that they'll be well hidden. That's one way of doing it, and you can add plugs later on to kind of hide those screws that you would need to use. You could also use plugs. You could use some dowels, or even if you have one of those Festool pockets, you could do that as well. I have the clamps and I have the time, so I'm just going to put these in the clamps right now because it's super easy to glue things together and it'll be very strong. But one thing that you do want to make sure of is, because this is an outdoor application, you do need to use outdoor glue. So make sure that you do that, or this is going to come apart. But yeah, let's start the glue up here. While the legs were drying, I cut 2 strips that will be used for added support under the bench. These are approximately 18 inches long and 2 inches wide. While everything is settling glue-wise, I had already prepared these boards yesterday by gluing them together. And now what I'm going to do is I am going to use my CNC to add my Standish last name to these boards here. And they are oversized right now, but I am basing it off of them being 5 feet. So I've centered it to this material. I'll just do it off of this nicer end here because the other end is the one that's looking a little bit yucky. So that one I will not be centering it from. And then we will cut these. So I decided not to go all the way through the wood, at least not yet. So my simulation right now looks something like this. I did a little V carve. So see if those details will show as we get into the project. Yeah, let's bring this over on the CNC. Quick minute to say thank you so much for following along this wood story. The reason that I'm able to bring these fun videos and instructional videos week after week is because of viewers such as yourself. So I'm excited to let you know that I've now opened up my own Patreon page so that we can spend even more time together. See the link right here, and I hope that you'll join me over there because it is the very best way to support me and to ensure that I continue to bring videos such as these ones. And I also wanted to let you know that I'm now offering merch right off of my website, and that link is right here. And the merch includes t-shirts such as this one. This is called the Upside Down Flip Shirt. And not only is it fun, it is also very practical because it allows you, when you are in the shop, to easily go from converting fractions to decimal all the way to millimeters. So you can take something from imperial and bring it to metric in no time, making it super handy and fun to have in the shop. So go grab that from my website as well. Now let's get back to this project. So while my employee was working away on the engraving, I went back to the now dry legs and I attached that support piece that I just cut using wood glue and a few screws. Afterwards, I cut the 3 bench seat boards to the final width of 5 feet. The third board is going to be too wide. I initially cut it on my table saw, but then I realized that I should really add a 15-degree angle to it. This way, it's going to sit nice and flush against the back. So this is my sign as it came off of the CNC. And because I didn't really think of too much about it when I glued up these boards yesterday, I did not pre-cut these to have a nice tight fit similar to what we did down there. Probably should have done that. So what I ended up with is this little ridge. And it's not that I mind it. I actually like it from the more of a rustic aesthetic. But the problem is that I want to color these little inlays right now, these little letters. I want to just spray paint them black. But if I go ahead and spray paint everything and then sand off the excess like I normally would, then all this color is going to seep into these little grooves, and that's going to take me forever to sand off. So what I've just done is I've just put some painter's tape on here, and then I'm going to bring this outside. I'm going to spray paint it. I might do 1 or 2 coats. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to sand off all the excess spray paint, and then I will stain it afterwards. So let's hope that, that turns out exactly how I want to. Let's do that now. I took everything outside and I did some sanding because it's so nice out here. And it worked out with the sign. I did 2 coats of spray paint. I did not pre-seal it or anything. And then I just sanded it off afterwards with some nice 60 grit sandpaper. Thinking back about it, I probably would have given it some sort of a shellac before starting the CNCing, like actually the routering of the letters. That would have been ideal just to avoid any bleeding. But I got lucky this time and it actually looks pretty decent. I'm still going to stain it. So the idea here is that I'm going to have the black background with a nice like dark brown-ish stain. So that's kind of the look that I'm going for. So it's nice and smooth right now. I still have to cut it to size. This one I had left too long to begin with. I need to cut it down to 5 feet. The other ones are already 5 feet. So once that's done, then I can either stain it and then assemble it, or I can assemble it and stain it. Either will work, it just depends what I feel like. With all the pieces lightly sanded and cut to final size, it was finally time to assemble this bench. I used a bucket and a bin just to hold the sides in place, but if you have an extra set of hands, that could also be very helpful. I started by attaching the back seat piece. That's the one that has the 15-degree angle. I made sure that it was 90 degrees to the bottom, and then I secured it with 2.5-inch screws, and I did pre-drill these before attaching the screws. The rest of the pieces were attached the same way. The back seat I held in place with some clamps, and then I used some longer screws at the bottom, 2.5-inch, and then some shorter ones at the top. I believe those were around 1.5 inches. I attached the last support piece for the bench once everything was assembled underneath the bench. And with this piece added, all that was left was the stain, which is completely optional. I would, however, recommend giving it a couple of coats of spar urethane to ensure that it's going to last a really long time outside in the elements. I already used pressure-treated wood, so this bench really should last forever. And if it ever starts to look a little dull, then a light sand and another coat of spar urethane will help freshen it up again. And with the stain and seal done, this bench was ready for me to sit on and enjoy next to my pond. I think this is going to be my new favorite place to sit when I have a few moments in between projects in my shop, which is right next door. Don't forget to grab the plans so that you can start building your own bench, because for less than $50 and with just a few hours to spare, you can be the proud owner of a similar bench. And remember, if you want to customize your own bench, but you don't own a CNC, then you can use the router templates that I've made available to you on my website. Let me know how you plan to customize your bench. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you soon in the next Woodstory.